So, Peter, thank you so much for being here in this new podcast episode. And thank you for taking the time to share your story and your journey and everything that you've gone through, from where you started to where you are right now. And well, first of all, welcome.
Well, I appreciate it. Look forward to the conversation, and I'm excited.
Thank you so much. So the first question, just so that everyone watching this episode gets to know you a little bit more, can you tell us a little bit, who you are, your company, and what you do in the company?
Sure. We won't go too far back because I don't think you have that much time, but my name is Peter Ellefson. I own EPO Group. We're a integrated financial services firm. We do taxes, fiduciary investment advisory, real estate, insurance, and consulting. And then so we just found out a long time ago to integrate it all, and you shouldn't have to do or work with 5 different companies to really plan and execute your financial plan. And most of it starts with tax. And that's part of the, genesis of the company is that a lot of people go to their tax person to get their taxes done. Very few people go to their tax person to get consulting and do tax planning. And so we incorporate all of it, have real estate as well. And so I don't know of any other firm that's integrated this way. And so I have a great team behind me. I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this since the late 80s. So as I like to, as the joke goes, I know where all the bodies are buried and I know where to uncover them. And so it's been a great journey. Like I said, I've got a large part of my family involved. I've got team members that have been with me 20 years. And so that's just a little bit of how we do it and what we do.
Thank you for that. That's a great introduction. If you know where Jimmy Hoffa is, there's a lot of people that would be interested in.
There, baby. Cash flow is like we like to call it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, just being on that topic, what sort of individuals or companies do you usually work with having all of that integrated?
Well, we work with businesses. We work with a lot of individuals. That's part of what we have. We might manage somebody's money and not do their taxes. We may do their taxes and manage their money, manage their real estate, buy and sell their real estate for them, have all of their insurance needs covered through us. So it's really, there is no set client because, again, we deal in so many areas. But one of the things that are consistent, it's financial services. So it might be taxes, it might be investments, it might be real estate. But what you're trying to do is give an integrated service level for people that they don't need to go to 5 or 6 different people to get answers or directions or get the wrong information. And we deal with a lot of businesses, but we deal with a lot of high net worth clients that we can incorporate all of that. It's funny, everybody's got real estate, everybody's got some investments, and unfortunately or fortunately for us, needs to get their taxes done. And it might involve all the way down to, the beauty of doing taxes is that it's COVID proof, it's recession proof, it's divorce proof, and it's bankruptcy proof. If you want to file bankruptcy, you got to file your taxes. You want to get divorced, you got to file your taxes. You want to get a refund, you got to file your taxes. And that's really where the emphasis on taxes come into play. And then we do a lot of consulting, and there's very few firms that do the consulting end of it. A lot of companies do taxes. Very few people do consulting. And I think it's a twofold part. They either don't dare charge their client what they should because, they may leave me, or they're just in the business to do the taxes. And the tax consulting is really where I think the industry is going, should have gone there a long time ago. And so it'll be interesting to see how they transition because this, I've read 3 different reports. The average age of a person in this industry is 66, and I've seen reports where they say it's 68. Nobody coming in to fill this gap. And why not be an advisor rather than, excuse the expression, just a grunt that's popping out a tax return, where I know P10 people that do a better job than some EAs. So, and that's part of the problem. It's become a commodity and everybody's, running down that rabbit hole to charge the least amount to get that client when they're probably not worth it.
Yeah, that is actually so true, especially that last part you said. Right? That I work with accountants, CPAs, financial services firms, and that's one thing where I have heard that over and over again, right? People are not value shopping, they're cost shopping, right? They don't understand the difference and why they should go with someone that offers more value, but at the same time charges more, right? And they just want to go with the one that, hey, this guy charges me $100 to $200 a month. So, and just going back a little bit, I know that you're not new to this. You've had the company for a while. And I wanted to ask you, how did the company, and the landscape look when you first started? And what have you seen that's sort of like the biggest change, in these years?
I guess in general, one of the things that when I started is that you had to, do seminars at night. You had to take people out. You had to do a lot of, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't drink. I want to be with my family. No, I don't want to go out at 7 o'clock at night and hang out with you. I don't want to go 8 hours golfing. It's not that I don't like people. I like my family more. And so I think that's one of the biggest changes is that, a lot of the guys I started in the industry had to go out and drink all the time with people and do that type of thing. That's one of the reasons we use acquisitions of tax practices to gather our clients. So I think that's one of the biggest change. Obviously, you could say technology, but we merge a lot of tax practices. They don't use technology. I mean, they're so antiquated, which is one of the biggest, I say, opportunities in acquiring tax practices. And we do a lot of that, is that they are very antiquated. So technology isn't even used. I think we've done approximately 28 different mergers, and not one of them used any technology. I mean, they may have used internet, they may have used email, and that's pushing it.
Wow.
And so I wouldn't even say technology. What I see is technologies coming on board, but not in the industry. So I think that's one of the biggest things. Like with us, we've been, completely virtual, paperless. We don't have meetings. We have meetings with people that we manage their assets, but most of it is done online. Most of it is done with video conferencing. I have a staff, I think it's 16 or 18 people. They all work virtually. Now, I'm blessed. I've had some people with me 20 years. They take care of business. I have some office space because I own the office space and it's a great tax write-off. So I think that's going to be the biggest change. But until we get the older set out, and I'm not that far off from a lot of these people, but they're very antiquated. They don't use any technology. And I think the other aspect that you see in the industry is that they allow 20 or 30 clients to dictate how their businesses run. And so I think those are the biggest changes. Like I said, technology is not a big change. It is in the industry, but in the mergers that we do, we don't see any indication of that, which again is part of the value added of doing the mergers on the small end because people are so antiquated. And then their pricing. Some haven't raised their prices in 10. We took over one last year. There hadn't been a price increase in over 20 years.
Wow.
Well, yeah.
Not even adding the inflation percentage, nothing?
Nothing. Which again, because the whole industry, again, percentage-wise, is really made up of, I like to call them one-offs. The one person doing it, maybe a helper. And they're buried in doing the business. And I would say it's probably close to 75% of the preparers out there are that one-off. And that's where I think the industry is going to change dramatically with the age group because there's nobody filling that vacuum. And there's tremendous value in merging tax practices. And that's the other thing we did it for was to create the lead source for our investment advisory, our insurance, our real estate, our consulting end. Our consulting end has exploded. And we just got to a point pre-COVID to move to virtual, to moving everything online, and to no longer listen. You got a quick question, takes me 5 minutes. Your client will help you with that. Goes any further than that, there's consulting fees on top of that. And we've really gone hardcore with that because it's insulting. You're going to call me, get advice. I might save you 10, 15, 20, 30, $40,000. Yes, you need to pay the value for that. And that's what we explain to people. There's a value here. If you don't see the value, I'm sure somebody down the road is willing to do it for free.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's a great way of, for lack of a better word, training your clients, right? And educating them. That's the word that I was looking for. Educating your clients on.
It is training and educating. You're right, because so many people that are in this industry are afraid, oh, if I raise the prices, they'll leave. It's interesting. I do a lot of consulting. I do consulting on the tax end to help people acquire firms and then also how to get their firm ready for the next transition. And I've done a number of consultations where I tell the people, double your fees, triple your fees. You will lose 40% of your clients. You'll make more money and you'll have less BS to deal with. And a lot of times they're like, I never even thought of that because I was afraid they would leave. And I said, you should pray that they leave. They're not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's the 80-20 principle, right? And if you're able to get that and really dial in the 20% of clients that bring you 80% of the profits, at the same time, just saying thank you to the 20% that give you 80% of the problems, that's where you build a more sustainable and actually fun business, right? One that you want to actually be a part of and not having to wake up and say, oh my God, like this just feels like a better paid job. But at the end of the day, it's just a job, right?
Well, and you're right. And it's interesting. We followed up with two people that we gave that advice to, and we told them about, basic. I always joke technology in the tax industry means they use email. But, we touched base with two of the ones that took our advice, and they said that it was dramatic. Their revenues increased dramatically, the workload reduced dramatically, and the nightmares reduced dramatically. And again, I find in the industry, everybody's afraid because the client might leave. Just have them leave. Think about it. If you just raise your prices 10, 15% and get rid of them, you're going to be in a much better place. And then again, part of the consulting we do with firms is to say, look at offering other services. If you can have 300 clients and make $500, $600, $700,000, isn't that better than having 1,000 clients making $300,000, $400,000? And so we encourage them to look at offering financial services, offering the consulting end of it. We have a number of firms that we actually do the consulting to teach them because they're afraid of doing the consulting because they don't really have the experience.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because again, there's a value added to that. If you can instruct them and show them how to save a substantial amount of money on taxes. We worked with 3 large clients not too long ago, and we're planning for this tax season, they're new clients, because we do think the tax laws are going to be changed where the cost segregation is going to go back, bonus depreciation is going to go back. You might be able to find clients to save them $20, $30, $40, $50,000. Obviously, it has to apply. They have to, you can't just have a W-2 person and claim you're going to save them a lot of money on taxes. Hey, get a 1099 basis and we might be able to do something. Your W-2, there's not a hell of a lot we can do for you. So the industry is exciting. I think vertically integrating it into a financial services firm. It's funny, they'll always come out with this study. The tax person is the most trusted advisor. And yet they're not involved in anything else. They're not involved in the management of their assets. They do no consulting. They're not involved in their real estate. They're not involved in their insurance. They're not involved in their trust planning. Why? We have a firm that's integrated, experienced, licensed, and competent that can handle, your taxes, your business taxes, your investments, your real estate, your insurance, and the consulting end of it. And you don't have to go to 20 different people who will probably fight to steer you the wrong way to keep your business. It's not an indictment, but you wonder why. I don't understand why the tax business does not do this. They'll have 1,000 clients or 1,500 clients to make $300,000 or $400,000 a year or $500,000 a year, and they're killing themselves. What's the joke in the industry? Well, I can't get true value from my practice, so I'll just die at my desk. We just took over. They basically died at their desk. We just took over a lady here that ended up going into hospice because she went downhill so dramatically, the family reached out to us. Now, we're large enough where we can do something like that, but, that's the nature of the business. Because there's no real value in tax practices, they have a hard time getting rid of them. I look at it on the other way. We design a way to do the mergers that's beneficial to everybody, and there's tremendous value out there in doing it. And then vertically integrating everything that goes along with it. Oh my God, what's the tax deduction on this? It's funny. We had a lady not too long ago that called and said, well, I'm selling my private residence. Do I need to buy a new house of bigger value? Shows you how disconnected they are. The tax people will understand what I mean by that. And there's just a ton of value. And the fact is nobody's coming into the industry. And why would they? Look at the way the IRS treats us. It's funny when people say, oh, the IRS, brings in whatever, 450 billion, they don't bring in jack shoot. We do. And then they treat us like crap. We should be billing them.
I agree.
We won't have an IRS pretty soon. That would be a good idea.
Hey, you know what? With the way things are going and, Dosh and Elon, who knows? We'll see what happens with that. Thank you for that. I mean, you talked about, you do a lot of different things, right? Within taxes, financial planning, tax planning, consulting, all of that. You also mentioned that you have, 17, 18 staff. Some of them have been with you for 20 years. I want to know, what can you walk me through what a typical day looks like for you? Like, what is it that you do mostly day to day?
And I'm glad you see that. And one of the things we just want to correct you a little bit, we don't do a lot of different things. We do one thing, financial services. It all ties together. It starts with tax and flows down. I'm fortunate. I do money management, real estate deals, business deals, acquisitions, and then I guide the company. My staff does everything else. So I might get on a consultation with somebody, review everything, and then I have either an EA or CPA or whoever will take that client on and do the taxes. the beauty of what I get to do, I usually get in, I'm usually in by, 5:36 every morning. I spend that time reviewing what's going on in the stock market. The beauty of it is I live in Arizona, so I can focus on those types of things till right around 8:30 or 9, but then it's just going to be a different thing. It may, we're right now trying to we're trying to acquire multiple tax practices, multiple insurance companies. And so I wrote a number of offers that I've sent to those. And like I said, do all of the reviews of all of the accounts. We manage quite a bit of money. We handle everything through Schwab. It's the best platform. We're a fiduciary. We only charge a fee. And then I'll have not too long, because my staff is annoyed by it, but I will touch base with each person that runs one of my other companies. So I'm blessed that my kids run one of my companies, so I'll have a brief conversation with them. Most of the time it's like, okay, come on, get to the point. I have two main coordinators that are my COOs. I will have a brief conversation with them. We're building out the insurance, one of our insurance divisions. I have two people that is running that for me. So most of my time initially will be talking to 5 or 6 of my upper management to see where we're at, what we're doing. And then the rest of the day we'll be dealing with specific high-end clients that I deal with. I just had one in here today, and this is the beauty of it. We manage her real estate. We manage a large portfolio of stocks and bonds. We do our taxes. And so I will meet with my high net worth clients to do that. And that's the beauty of it. They come one place, and like I said, we manage the real estate, the investments. We have all of our insurance. And now you're turning be careful of this without divulging too much, but that might be a $45,000 a year client. And so, we have a lot of clients like that. And so that's why I'm always confused with tax people don't want to do that. They want to stumble around with a $300 or $400 tax return. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a value added to what you can bring that client. And what was interesting is that unfortunately this person's husband just died, and I walked through the stepped up basis on all their real estate and explained to her that, your husband did a beautiful job for you. Well, guess what? Now you have a massive home. There's no reason to be there. And we get a stepped up on that so we can sell it and not have any tax implications.
That's great.
If we do, it might be minor.
Yeah.
But I'm able to analyze and review 4 or 5 major aspects of her life that she might have to go and talk to 3 or 4 other people. And then who's going to coordinate between 3 or 4 other people? Because, everybody's a genius, right? So they want to explain to you what an idiot you are and what a genius they are. It's commonplace. That's the value added that we bring. And then we still deal with a lot of the $300 and $350 tax return. My other team members will be able to handle that, take very good care of people. And then the technologies that we've introduced, dramatic changes that very few other tax firms do. Don't get me wrong, there's some out there, but if you go in the totality of it and you look at 500 tax firms, maybe 5 are doing this. And the rest of them are still drop off your stuff. Hopefully I'll get it done. And they don't, because the industry is just overwhelmed.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things is I think that they just do that because that's what they were taught, right? Either at school or in their original firm that they went and interned at or just worked after college. And I think that that's what they think the norm is, right? Like, well, this is how things are done. But to your point,
but you have a great point there, just to interject on what you just said there. There's so many of them that I'll talk to, whether we're trying to do a merger or whether we're talking to them, because I could do 20 of these mergers a year, easy. But I have to make sure that we can absorb it and do it the right way and take care of everybody. And then most of them are so antiquated, it's shocking. People only knew how bad it was. But they all say the same thing. Well, I don't want to do that because it's just quicker for me to do it myself. Because so many are just a one-off person. They might be themselves and 2 or 3 helpers. And as I say to them, well, you're correct. But if you ever want to develop this into a company, because now all you really have is a high-margin, crappy job. You make good money, but you're killing yourself. And you have no way to get out of it. So until you automate it, until you turn it into a business, then you're just going to be like this. And then when you try to exit, nobody's going to want to touch it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the things that they don't realize until the end, right? And going back a little bit to what you said in terms of the joke of them, like just dying at the desk. They might realize it until it's too late, and now literally it's too late to do something. So that's why I think it's great that what you're doing and the way you've structured everything, right? And when we first talked about it, I was telling you, like, I love the way that you've structured things, because it just shows a different way, a creative way of looking at things and doing things, and also like actually taking advantage of being that trusted advisor. I don't remember if I told you or not, but my grandfather was a CPA. And I remember with my grandfather, right, that he was the godfather of some of the kids of his clients. He got invited to the parties, he got invited to the weddings, to the kids' weddings, and everything else, because that's how it used to be. Now it's gotten a little bit different, right? Now that doesn't really happen that much. But if you're in that position where you literally are that trusted advisor, why would you stop? I think that most people that just stop at that are doing a disservice to their clients, because they could help them that much more, right? It's not just about them trying to sell more, but it's actually helping the client, better plan, pay less taxes, be able to just plan for the future. Like that lady that you just talked about, right? That her husband did a great job, so that now that unfortunately he's passed, she doesn't have to worry about a thing, but not a lot of people do that.
No, and I think that's, again, what you should be is an advisor. And it is a value. It's just like some people say to me, wow, you're a lot more expensive than an attorney. And I said, well, I'm going to give you a real answer. We're going to figure out how to structure this and how to do it. We're going to have a plan, and we're going to be able to implement it. And I'm going to actually give you an answer rather than, well, it depends. And there's so many ways, it's kind of like what I tell people. You don't need to lie and cheat the government. You don't need to play games. You just need to follow the tax laws. They're mind-bogglingly beneficial to you. Whether it's, and again, we hope that the tax laws are re-upped for the next stage, but, whether it's, I talked to somebody that has 10 pieces of real estate and there's never been a cost segregation done. I talked to a doctor that has this is an actual case, 15 pieces of real estate. What does your wife do? Nothing. Well, you realize we could potentially make her a real estate professional. There's no licensing. It's just qualifying per the tax laws. And we might be able to come up with a staggering amount of tax write-offs for you.
Nice.
I run into those types of things all the time. I ran into a guy that runs a huge company, makes a lot of money. It's with blood testing. And I said, what does your wife do? Well, she's a realtor, but she doesn't really do it. And I'm going through it, and you own 3 major office buildings. You self-rent. You have all of this real estate. Oh, my God. And I mean, by the time we got through with it, it was I want to be careful on this, but it was tens of thousands, if not a couple $100,000 we saved them in taxes.
Wow.
And it was interesting. He brought his CPA into one of the meetings with us. And the guy freely admitted, I don't have time for this stuff. And I'm like, dude, you realize you have a client that can do a self-rental? And he goes, I'm not sure what that is. Oh, do you realize a cost segregation? And we were able, this was 2 years ago, we were able to get in there when it was still 80% cost segregation. And he had told him to hire his wife as an employee at the firm. There's so much of this out there that's a value that you should have, or they set up structures that are a disaster for them later on.
Yeah.
So there's so much you can do for your clients and be paid well, and to have more of an advisory firm rather than a piecemeal of calling the clients 15 times begging for their documentation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a very important point, right? I think that if they're able to actually look at things a little bit different, right? Like you've done it, I think most of them would realize that, why am I doing all of this work? I could be doing far more valuable work, right? And actually be helping the client more and making more money myself than we would be doing, right? And like you said, with the taxes, it's a one-off, right? You don't even know if that same person is going to give you the taxes the next year, right? So I understand, a lot of the valuations for a lot of businesses come from the monthly recurring revenue, as opposed to, last year I had this many taxes, this many tax claims, but I'm not sure this year how it's going to look like.
Well, and you hit it right on the head, Oscar, because here's the thing. I get a lot of people say, I just refer that out. To who? Well, a guy. Do you even know who the hell he is? Do you know what he is doing to your clients? No, you don't. Why wouldn't you keep that in-house and value that client, take care of that client? And I hear this all the time. I just farm it out to another guy. I don't want to do too much. Why would you do that? Because it's financial services. If you're a tax guy, you should understand investments. You should understand real estate. You should understand how they work, because it's all about the taxes. And then you would just farm it out to some guy. Do you even know who this person is? Do you know if he has issues? You don't. So don't, why would you do that? And then you hit another thing that's perfect. Do you realize a valuation for a tax practice? In most cases, you can Google it. is most cases, it's maybe one time.
Yeah.
And that's if it's a good practice. Most of them are worth points, so maybe 1, and then you pay a commission on that, and then there's a clawback. You might get 65 cents on the dollar if you're
Yeah.
lucky. And I've been in this forever, so don't tell me I did this and it turned out well. Maybe 1 out of 15. But most of them you'll make 60, 65 cents on the dollar. It'll blow up. It's interesting. I talked to a lady not too long ago. She goes, I'll never do that. We did an agreement together. She goes, not only did I not get anywhere near what it did and it blew up in my face, but all of the clients I knew wouldn't speak to me again.
Oh, wow.
But also on the other factor, do you know what a valuation out of a great book of business on investment advisors are? That could be a 3 to a 6 multiple and higher.
Yeah.
And you know what it is on the insurance end? 2.75 to maybe 3. And yet on a tax end, you're going to work your ass off all your life, be under tremendous stress, and you might get 0.8 out of that practice. And I don't understand the mentality of that. And maybe it needs to be more re-educated, because most of the people in the industry have been in it for 25, 30, and 40 years. And maybe they don't want to take on a new animal. I get it. But the new people moving forward should think about, okay, I want $5,000 a year client. I want $10,000 a year. I want $20,000 a year client. I don't want out of this other stuff. It's kind of, I go back to the same thing when I tell people what my consultation is or what this is. It's about value. And, most of the people I see out there doing consulting have been in the business for, 5 years, 8 years. I want to see somebody that's been around to see 3 major market crashes.
Okay.
So it's interesting that you point that out, that's another reason that the tax business, you can pick them up for very low valuations. You're in essence acquiring clients that are going to pay you $300 to $500 a year to lay out their whole financial situation, and then you're there to build from that and get them in the right direction and put a plan together. Well, this industry is incredible, but not incredible to go in and do $300 tax returns and look like you're 90 when you're 60.
Yeah. I've met some people like that. I completely agree.
A lot of white guys out there with pocket protectors. I've heard the laughs. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I see a few more people that are getting involved in it that are females and trying to do this, but they're not incorporating it as a financial service business and they're just there to do the transaction, and hopefully people will realize there's a lot more there. And it's not just about that you can make more money, it's that you can do a lot better for your clients and have fewer clients so you have a better lifestyle.
Exactly. And that's exactly why I mentioned it, right? It's not about, I need to find a way of selling more to them, but it's actually, I need to find a way of giving more value to them, right? And if you give value, the money will come. So I completely agree with you on that. And just changing a little bit, I wanted to ask you this, because I think that you're doing great things, everything that we've talked about. I think you're a very creative guy and things are looking great. But I do want to know, is there, what would you say it's the biggest challenge, if there's any, that you or your business are facing right now?
Well, not that we're facing, but because we run incredibly smooth. There's always challenges in any business. That's what running, that's why when you run profitable businesses, it's not for everybody, because you're always dealing with issues. That's part of it. I think the biggest obstacle or the biggest challenge that we find in doing the mergers is that the practices that we merge or look at are so antiquated. They're so, as I like to joke, they allow 20 or 30 or 40 clients to dictate how they run their business. So is it a challenge? Yes. But I mean, the opportunity and the margins and the profit you get from taking over these antiquated, inefficiently run businesses is exactly what you hear about. They're still using fax machines. Can you imagine that? Only the IRS still uses fax machines. Don't get me started on those guys. But so yes, the challenge is, that when we take these over, we took over two last year that they did their bookkeeping on spreadsheets. We took over one, it would be actually 2 years ago. He did a lot of his bookkeeping. Now, you won't know what this is, and maybe a lot of the people will, but they did it on recipe cards. So these little cards, and they had everything written out like that. Those are the challenges that we see because the industry is not what people think. It's not the I-Baileys. It's not incredibly organized and professional. 85% of these people are just a CF. They don't know what they're doing. They're so overwhelmed. The IRS jacks with them all the time. But again, with those challenges create an incredible market opportunity to consolidate this industry and then fold it into what we do. Because when we do mergers, we don't take over their debt. We don't take over their office location. We turn it to virtual. If the client doesn't like it, we want the clients, but you don't get to dictate. We'll get it all the time because we'll do 3 mergers a year. But actually, Ellen did it this way. And I don't say it, but I want to go, okay, Ellen's dead. We're not Ellen anymore. And, I don't wear high heels unless it's the weekend. I'm joking. But we get a lot of that. This is how we run our company. If you'd like to come over, we'll take incredibly good care of you. If you don't, go find somebody else. We do everything through text and email. We do everything through electronic signatures and filing and signing. If the client brings in their documents, we charge them to scan and do it. We don't print their returns for them. This is the reality of the new vision. Now, again, some people will have clients come in and say, I want a copy of my return. Okay, it's $150. And they pay it.
And so just because you mentioned it, I'm just curious, what would be the standard percentage of clients that maybe you lose in terms of, okay, so I'm acquiring a new firm. We know that we're going to lose, I don't know, 10% of them, 5% of them, whatever it is.
You have to understand, because we don't do a traditional merger. We have a very unique way, shameless plug, we do consulting on doing that. But if somebody sends us a list and there's 500 people, we might figure we'll get 50% of those people.
Okay, 50, okay.
And then we'll probably lose another 20 or 30% the next year because they don't like the way we do things. The margins are so incredible from that. And then we incorporate the other businesses that the returns are mind-boggling. They really are. But again, we don't want that. Again, it's not a knock, and every tax person that's listening to this will understand. I don't want a person coming in dictating how I run my business. And that's what they do. They may have 200 or 300 or 800 clients, but they got 75 or 80 people that are just demanding and want it a certain way. And we just don't do that. Just like with, well, no, we want you to print. We're going to come in and sign the return. That's not what we do. You'll need to find somebody else. It's not that we're trying to be rude or disrespectful, but I can't let everybody dictate how they want me to run my business. And everything we have is based around. So, because you have to, and you're really good at this, because this is a great point, and every person that's listening to this will understand in the tax business. I joke with people we do mergers with and those that we don't, or we talk with. You don't have a business, you have a relationship.
Yep.
And if you try to sell or extradite yourself from the business, they will leave in droves. They're there for 2 reasons. You're dirt cheap and they like you. And in most cases, because you're dirt cheap, and you let them jack you around on how you're going to do it.
Yep.
And so that's the problem with the tax business. And again, I'm not talking about a $4 million firm. I'm talking about 85% of the firms out there are $400,000 and down. They leave, people will leave in droves. And that's one of the reasons that it's such a high percentage. Real quick, we did a merger about 18 years ago, my first one.
Wow, okay.
And we sent out the cards and the letters, and oh my God, we're so much better, and we're nice people, and we'll love you and care for you. 58% of the people never showed up.
Wow, just from the beginning, okay.
My joke, I love this one, we didn't get a chance to piss them off. We didn't even get that opportunity. They didn't come. But that's the point when I realized it's not a business, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, Bob does it this way. Well, Carol will let me do it. I'm not Carol, I'm not Bob, not Ted, I'm not Alice. This is how we run things. We'll take great care of it. We'll be incredibly responsive. You'll get your return back within 2 days, as long as we have all your stuff. There's no dragging this shit out. You'll get it. You text us at midnight during the tax season, we'll respond. You send us an email. If it's sent at 8 o'clock in the morning, you will get a response by 2 o'clock that afternoon. Phenomenal. Yeah. But certain ways we do things.
And I think, going back to it, it's a great way of educating, right, and training the client. And I was going to say, when you actually allow so many of your clients to dictate how you should do things, it's not only a relationship, it's also, if it's 70 clients that you allow them to do that, then you have 70 different jobs at the end of the day. Right, because now you have to do things 70 different ways in order to cater to everyone. And that's just not sustainable. At the end of the day, you're going to get stuck there because you want to keep them. You're going to do those 70. And if you were just able to do, like you said, we do things one way and this is the way we do it, then you're freer to actually have more time to do creative thinking, to do work on the business instead of in the business and actually do strategic planning and bring more value to your business and your clients. But if not, if you're just stuck there, then yeah, I can see how, you know, you just, like, a lot of people just get stuck there, and that's why they're having those 0.65, 0.7, 0.8x of the value of their company when they actually want to exit.
If you get out of this, again, it doesn't mean there isn't an individual case you could Google it. The industry standard is 1 to 1.1 sale price. If you pay a commission, there's 10% there. Most all have a 20 to 25% clawback in there. I guarantee you there's 35 to 40% of your business gone right there.
Yeah.
Right there. And again, the other fact that you put in there, it's not a business, it's a relationship. They are there for, like I said before, most of the time it's because they're so cheap because nobody raises their prices. They're afraid to raise their prices. There should be a 3 to 4% increase every year, and most don't do it. And then, like I said, they probably like you. You know, if clients want to do a sit down, it's on a video. They don't get to come in, they don't get to throw all of their documents over the desk, have me go through, because it has to be a respect. It's, you care about these people, you like them, but I'm in the middle of the tax season. I can't spend an hour with you revisiting your vacation. I care, but I can't do that right now. And, you know, it's kind of funny. You know, people say, how's the transition? You know, most of our clients that are late 60s, 70s, 80s, we have clients that are 90 that use our portals and do everything, and they love it.
Wow, nice.
I like to joke with them. I see, you don't need to get your Sunday go to meeting clothes on. Put your hair up in rollers, jump on the video camera, we can handle it from there.
That's awesome. Thank you. And, you know, just we're getting into the 42, 45 minute range right now. And I love our conversation. You know, I told you the last time that we spoke that I was actually very excited about this episode because I think you're very personable. I really like the stories and the way you're extroverted and just tell it like it is. I'm the same way. But I do want to ask, you know, before we run out of time, because I also want to take more of your time that I need to, is I don't see you stopping anytime soon. And that's a compliment, right? I see that you're still, you know, going and getting stuff. You're still going after deals. But I'd like to know, looking ahead, you know, 6, 12 months from now, like, what are your main goals?
To grow, more acquisitions. You know, I mean, and again, I got to be careful with this because I don't want to insult anybody, but you know, I see a lot of people retire. Women handle it better than men, but you lose your worth. I love what I do. I get to do the fun, exciting part. I guess if I was like a lot of people where I was buried into this and I don't want to do it, you know, I get to do negotiations. I get to manage stocks. I get to pay attention to what's going on in the business world. I get to buy real estate. I own quite a bit of real estate. I get to try to buy and merge companies. I try to do 3 to 4 a year. That's fun, man. That is just a blast. I love it. I'm blessed. I think I told you this before. You know, I was able to bring my kids into the business. That has just, you know, changed it to a legacy. You know, I joke, it's real funny. You know, my kids went out, got their degrees. Nah, Dad, no, we're cool. Then a couple of years later, they're like, you know, that idea you had. And I joked with them. I said, you know, your mother and I need to interview you to see if you're somebody we want to have in the organization. And they run one of our companies. They do a brilliant job, just a brilliant job. I got to be careful. I'll get all emotional. And then I have guys that have been with me forever. So I have no desire to retire because I don't want to lose that worth. But I already get to do whatever the hell I want to do when I want to do it. And without being too arrogant, money isn't an issue. You know, what more do you want? And, you know, there's a great story we used last year. We had 2 clients that called up and were all pissed because I wasn't at a meeting. And I called him back and said, what are you pissed about? Well, I showed up to your office. You weren't there. Sunday. I said, is it that pathetic that you don't even know what day it is? So I get to do what I want to. See, to me, success is doing what I want to do when I want to do it, but still taking care of business. And I get to have all of that. Doesn't mean there aren't some days where I joke with my wife. I don't know if you got this. You know, I've been with my wife 40 years. We have an incredible relationship. And I'll say to her, oh, God, it's a 4-day weekend. What am I going to do? You know, so yeah, I get to travel. I get to do what I want. You know, we're traveling quite a bit on business. I've got 6 different acquisitions I'm working on right now. I mean, wow, I can't wait to get up in the morning. I'm so blessed and love it. And then again, I have staff team that does everything else for me that I don't have to do any of the annoying things, you know. I mean, look at this. I get to hang out with you for damn near an hour. I mean, how much better can that get?
In the middle of tax season, right?
Exactly. I'm in the middle of the tax season. And it was interesting. This lady that was just in the other day, she referred me to a lady that her husband passed away. And, I don't have to be there. Or we just took on a major 4 tax resolutions that we deal with. How many firms can do all of that? And the guy called me up, and the latest one, and he's freaking out. He hadn't done his taxes in like 8 years. And then he filed them all at once. And I said, this is going to cause, he goes, I don't care. I need to solve this. I can't take this anymore. Well, it's interesting. He calls me up and he goes, oh my God, I need somebody on this immediately. I said, well, you sent us the forms at 8. We've already called the IRS agent. It's 9:30. I don't know what more I can do for you. And he laughed and he goes, wow, thank you. And I said, I did find it interesting. They're demanding all of this in the middle of the tax season. How many firms could handle this for you? And so we have all of those areas, and that's what you should be. You should be a financial services. That's why I picked on you a little bit. We don't do a lot of things. We do one thing. We do financial services.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that's just one thing where it sounds like it is a lot of things, right? So I can see where the value would, what people would like, oh my God, this guy's like, I would have needed 3, 4, 5 different people to do what this company does for me, right? So, and that was part of what I meant earlier with that. Peter, I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me, for being here. And I hope to speak to you soon, whether it's for another podcast episode or just, one-on-one, because I had a lot of fun just speaking with you. And I know that I've learned a lot from you. So thank you for being here.